What is up? Welcome to this week's episode of Lambgoat's Vanflip podcast. On this week, we have Andrew and Chris from one of the earliest metalcore bands you could probably remember, Skycamefalling from Long Island. Welcome to the show, guys. How are you doing today?
Doing good.
How's it going?
Pretty good. You guys have been pretty busy as of late. We just got back from New York, and me and my buddy JP, who's also a partner here at Lambgoat with me, we flew to New York to see the PTW shows, and you guys were on two of those shows that we saw, or the two that we saw, I should say. There's three shows altogether. But yeah, I think that was like probably my first time ever seeing you, because I don't think I saw you back in the late 90s, early 2000s when you were, more active, but it was a pleasant surprise seeing you in Indecision on the lineup in real life, finally.
Yeah, I don't think we played Florida much when we were an active band. We tended to somehow end up avoiding it for whatever reason.
It's a hard place to come to, because like if you want to hit any of the spots in Florida, they're usually more south than like say where I'm at in North Florida, Jacksonville. You usually want to go to like Orlando or Miami or South Florida or Tampa, but then that's a drive coming from the closest major city would be Atlanta. So it's another 5-6 hour drive until you get to Florida. So usually bands make it like a whole weekend/week thing when they come down here. They'd hit like 5 cities or something like that.
Yeah, I think we played Magic Fest in Orlando one year, and then one time we went down to South Florida. And that was our first tour, actually. Other than that, I think all of our other tours, for whatever reason, just bypassed. We ended up, usually going from Valdosta, Georgia, and then Atlanta, and then up.
Yeah, the early days when you were a lot more VFW halls and weird, strange basement shows back in the day. Speaking of which,
GPS too.
yeah, no GPS. That's one of the wildest things I think about, because I toured in my little crappy band too, and it was a lot of. Luckily for us, like my dad always had atlases around, and that was like one of his things that he would like look at in the bathroom. Like when he was in the bathroom for a long period of time, he would just look at an atlas. And so I got into that. I not got into it, but I just would do it out of habit too. So I could read an atlas pretty well. But luckily, we also had MapQuest was like on the cusp of the beginning of like directional options for you to like look up stuff. But you had to like print the directions out. You couldn't like look it
it's
up.
like on your seat and you're like checking it. Yeah,
Yeah, we had at the time what came out that was pretty hot right around the middle of the band was Microsoft had that Maps program that was a CD that didn't require internet.
Wow.
So it was like just basically like a downloadable map, and you could kind of figure out where you were, and we were using that. And I think there was like some kind of plugin or something that you were able to figure out where you were, but this is like way before any of the technology that exists today.
Yeah, that sounds like it's before TomTom and all that stuff.
Yep.
We
never had any of that.
Yeah, you used to have to download the maps on that too. That wasn't, as accurate. You could have old TomTom information, and be going in the wrong direction or not on the right proper road back in the day.
Have to pay for traffic updates.
Yeah,
I remember.
True. Yeah,
I remember that. But yeah, all of this was before any of that. I mean, we were booking our tours with phone calls and would stop at a payphone and be like, "Are we going in the right direction?" And
a lot of payphones.
Then we'd be like, "This is the time we're going to get in," etc. And yeah, I think toward the end of the band is when it kind of started to cell phones became a little more widespread. But otherwise, yeah, we didn't have any of that.
Yeah, my first tour was like '04. And I think by that time, sidekicks and all that stuff were already kind of like, the mainstay in our little scene. Everyone had a little AIM, flip screen sidekick thing, and I didn't. But you could look up some things on there. But yeah, it was a lot of pulling over at like rest stops, busting out the atlas in the middle of the night, and just like looking at like, well, where are we? So I'm amazed we ever got anywhere, to be honest with you. Especially like like I just said, like really off the beaten path, like VFW halls and little venues that you would have to play. They're not like really well-known spots. So tours working in general back in the day are like insane to comprehend now because it's so easy. You have it on your phone and the directions tell you how many feet you have to go to before you take a left. It's crazy.
I mean, just the fact that people would book us and had never heard the band. I mean, I would call people out of state and be like, I got your phone number from so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, okay, I could do a show for you on this date. Like, not sight unseen, never hearing the band, just knowing our name. And, or, obviously we weren't a big band, and we get a demo out at the time and they would just let us play their city and sleep in their place. So it was a pretty wild experience back then.
Yeah. How many tours did you guys do before you guys had a longer break there?
So when we first started the band, our bass player was actually in high school. So we would only do like breaks, as we were touring. But I think once we hit 99, we toured full time. I think we were home for 2 or 3 months out of the year, up until about 2003, I think. So we were basically full time for about 4 years.
And then that's just you guys booking your own stuff, or did you have help from like Ferret or anything like that at that time?
We had, I think right in the middle, we connected with Jim Grimes from Chicago. I think his booking agency was Handsome Devil at the time. He was doing like Martyr and Another Victim and a couple other bands, and he got us. We worked with him for a few years, and then toward the end, I think we got a couple tours, but they were always through the other bands, like booking agents. Like when we did a tour with Bloodlet, it was through their agent. When we did a tour with Under Oath, it was through theirs.
Yeah, you guys were like, I don't want to say you're not originators of metalcore, but you're definitely within that first wave of metalcore. And I don't know if you guys consider yourselves metalcore, because obviously metalcore's turned into a little something different these days than like the Deadguy version of it. But when you listen back, 'cause I spent most of the day listening to like your early stuff, also because you're re-releasing for the first time ever on vinyl 1021, which we'll talk about, but you're releasing that, and I spent some time with that today. And actually I went to Ferret Records here in town, and that's kind of our little scene record store. It's owned by James Sabani of Bane and Casey Jones and all those bands. So it curates to our little audience here in town. But I actually found Forever Embraced by the Sun on CD there. Yeah, so I was like, oh, well, I'll pick that one up because I didn't have that one. So you never know what's going to come through that little spot. He buys collections all the time, so I thought that was cool. But it must have been very strange to get tours like that, because obviously like the genre wasn't really as well defined as it is now, or as it would become in the mid to late 2000s and early 2010s. But it's kind of crazy that you would just call up people out of the blue and be like, yeah. So like,
yeah.
Would you negotiate like a fee, and like how often would you get paid the fee?
I mean, there were times we were lucky. I can remember, I think it was one of our very first tours. I booked it myself, and I called someone from North Carolina who gave me Dave's number from Prayer for Cleansing. And Dave was like, I have Harvest coming through. Do you guys want to play the show? So we were like, sure. So like, we were looking for a date, and he just happened to have like another date. So we took that date. And then, so shows like that, often we do a little bit better. Shows by ourselves, I mean, we were happy to make gas money just to get to where we were going. For us at the time, it was like, we were just doing this on the break that we had, right? Like Matt and I think Cameron were both in high school at the time. So when we first started, it was summertime that we were just going out and doing this. And I think for a lot of the guys, it was really it was their first time on tour. Yeah. So we were happy to just play anywhere for anyone. And there were times we would show up to a show and just say, hey, we're from New York and we don't have a show today. Can we hop on your show? And sometimes we got lucky and they let us play. Other times they'd let us set up merch. Other times we, just got to stay in the show for free. Yeah. But yeah, I remember we did it to a show in Florida. I'm trying to think, Vero Beach, I think. Mm-hmm. We showed up to a show. Caven and Ire were on tour at the same time as us. Oh, wow. And we showed up there and they were like, you guys can sell merch. We don't have any spots on the show for you guys to play. So we just set up merch and hung out, watched Caven and Ire.
How does that work out though? When you're selling merch at the venue and the bands are like, yeah, loved you, or the people come out like, loved you guys, and you're like, yeah, totally, man.
I don't think we sold anything that night, but we were like, you know what? Let's just set up, see if anybody maybe, is interested and wants to buy a demo. I think our demos were like $3 or something. So yeah, but it was something to do because otherwise, what were we gonna do? Sit in the hotel room, or not even sit in the van?
I was gonna say, like, if you had a hotel room, you're lucky.
Yeah,
You're lucky.
Exactly.
How? So when you're booking tours and stuff, like you just said, like you reached out to Dave from Prayer and he had like a show on a certain day. How often did that happen? And like, what's the longest that you would go to play just like a show, or was like, in like booking a tour when you have situations like that arise where like you're looking for a certain date but he's got a different date available, like how would the routing work for you guys back in the early days?
We just made it. I think there were a couple times we doubled back on a few occasions just to make something work. I mean, there were times we did silly stuff like, I think we were in Quebec City and our next show was in New Jersey. Like, and that was an all night, overnight, just to get there. So we did dumb things like that, but at the time you just didn't want to have the day off. So it was like, day off was no money. We weren't, doing anything. There were definitely times that we had a couple days off here and there, mostly in the early stuff. But for the most part, we just try to fill it in wherever we could. And, you just hear about things that were going on. You talk to another band that either was like from that town and, you try to just make a few phone calls while you were out. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't.
Yeah, luckily for everybody, gas was much cheaper back in the day and you could double back on some stuff. But you weren't getting that much money anyway, so it's all probably relative. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, we were, I can't ever remember a time that back then that we were like, not hoping we'd get enough gas money to make it to the next show.
Yeah. No, it was tough times back then, especially for like, smaller bands than you. God, well, I just threw myself off because I was going to ask you something about touring again. Whatever, it's gone. So anyway, 1021 finally coming out on vinyl. What was the decision behind that? Finally doing it after all these years now. It's like 20 plus years.
Yeah, I'll kind of start this off and then I'll let Andrew take over.
Okay.
So we had that record actually was originally released by Ferret, and then Ferret got somehow wrapped up in that whole Warner Brothers acquisition. We didn't have a contract with Ferret, so our record got kind of wrapped up in that whole situation. So we tried to reach out to Warner on several occasions to get, any type of, communication from them. And often what would end up happening was either they wouldn't write us back or they would write us back until they found out we didn't have a contract. So I had always wanted to put out the record on vinyl. I was like, hey, let's do this. And for a while, I was like, let's just do this. We were trying to do it the right way. Like I was like, maybe I could work out something with Warner, but they owe us for the digital royalties for all these years. So let's try to, make this work out. But they wouldn't answer us. So even with the contacts we received from Carl over at Good Fight, who owned Ferret, it just never worked. So there, for a while, I debated on the idea of just simply getting the CD and just taking that to the pressing plant and just putting something out, because I always wanted the record on vinyl. It was originally supposed to be released on vinyl. And we actually had artwork done by Jake Bannon at the time, back in 2000 when it came out. Jake had done the artwork. We were waiting for a label that was going to be releasing it, and it ultimately fell through. So then I think the next idea we tried was, could we get the actual masters back from the mastering company, which was West Side, but it turned out technology by that point had changed, and they no longer supported that type of file that these were on. So it was actually, I remember the Alan from West Side telling us that Stuff John Stevens was actually looking for his stuff, and he didn't have enough time to get it for him. And I was like, well, then we're way down on this totem pole here, like that we're looking for this. So right around COVID, when COVID happened, Andrew kind of got the idea to take the analog tapes that we had and get them, transferred to digital. So I'll let you kind of take over from there in terms of like what we did.
So first I had to we reached out to John, who was like in the original lineup, and the tapes were in his like garage or something, like, and who knows like
The condition,
where,
yeah.
like, like so. And as you know, like tapes degrade over time, so it's not like when you recorded it 20 years ago. So
Yeah.
um, so I had John send me like all the tapes, and there was like reels in there. There was ADAT tapes. There was DAT tapes. So it was like I don't know how many. Like there's probably like 8 different
Yeah,
like
mixed
physical
formats.
media
Wow, yeah.
physical media that we had to look at. And so then I was like, I need to find a company that can like actually take all this stuff and send it back to me, because not every company can do reels, and they just do ADATs or whatever. Like, so I forget what the name of the company was, but I had them digitize everything and send it to me, and it was like pretty high cost to do that,
Well,
to
yeah.
like get everything digitized. But in doing that, we got and when it came back, it was literally like wave files, but it was just like 0000 0001 wave, 0002 wave. So like I had to weed through like,
Figured it all out. Yeah.
is this a bass track? Is it a vocal? Like we had to like find everything, and it's like, if you think about how reels are, it's just one big take of every song.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it might be the vocals for 5 songs.
Yeah.
So, and you have to chop them and put them all back together. So we spent a while just kind of like putting it all back together.
Do you have an idea of how long that took? Like how long that process took? Like just getting everything in order per song?
Months.
Yeah, it's probably months
Wow.
to do that.
And I think our original intent at that time, because I was thinking about this today, our original intent was, could we do this ourselves? Like, could we mix this, just remix it, and then get it mastered and just do it ourselves? And I think with the sheer volume that we ended up finding, it turned out like there was just no way we were gonna like, once it was pieced back together, there was just no way. We were in above our heads at that point.
And that's where you call Will in.
Did we at that point?
Before we get into that, I want to know, because you were saying like you didn't have, the contract, and there were some issues with Warner Brothers, and then I know you guys like re-recorded some stuff on at least guitar work on the album. So I was wondering if like you were just trying to do like a Taylor Swift thing where you re-record your whole album and you can put it out yourself. Okay.
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. I know. So we are doing like Skycamefalling's version. But we like when we got like everything back together, like the guitars, like there was just a lot of guitar tracks and they were kind of weak. The bass tracks had all been tracked by me at that point, not Matt, who was like the original bassist. And Matt was like, I want to, like, if we're gonna do any recording stuff, I want to be in on that. Mm-hmm. So then we had Matt do like a whole bunch of bass tracks, and my brother went up to Applehead, which is Chris Bittner and Mike Birnbaum.
Okay.
Where all sleeping stuff is recorded. So he went up there and did all the guitars there, and so then it started to come back together again because it brought more life to it. And some of the tapes had degraded to a point where I felt like the quality, even of what we had in the original, it was like not there, like on the guitars for sure. Vocals were great, but we're still really good on the reels. But the guitars and even the drums needed work. So
how much of the re-release remastered is all new recordings?
Like so 50/50? Most of the guitars and bass are new, but my brother so when my brother was there doing that cam, he basically took a lot of the guitars there too that were the old guitars and still mixed it with the new guitars, because they still he didn't want it to lose the vibe of the record.
I got you. Yeah.
But we wanted the guitars to be heavier than what was on the original.
Yeah, and I think that some of what we wrote in the liner notes for this record was how, some of this backstory of how this kind of came together. But at the time, we were like 20 years old and recording, like, I mean, I'm sure you probably remember this, but like getting a good recording was everything for the bands. That I personally think it kind of, if you got a good recording, people took you seriously. Like, think about, we were just talking about this at the show. Poison the Well's record for Opposite of December was like the best recorded record I mean, like when that came out, it was like, oh my goodness, like this just sounds so good. That, Deadguy and Fixation on a Coworker, Earth Crisis records, like those records were all huge sounding. And we were taking those records, not Poison the Wells, but we were taking Earth Crisis, we were taking Deadguy's record to the studios and being like, this is what we want to sound like. And studios had no idea. Like, we were called a thrash band over and over and over again by the studios we were going to. They were like, oh yeah, we're really into this thrash metal stuff. And we're like, that's not
it's not really what's going on.
Into. And so what ended up happening was when we wanted to sound heavier, we thought like, you need more guitars. So we just layered on like 20 guitar tracks, not realizing that like you just made everything that much muddier and less clear. So like less was more. We didn't know that. We thought more was more. So in the end, I think what we realized now that we've learned over, these years is that, we don't need to do that. So the idea was really just, how can we preserve a lot of what we had and kind of like not take away from the vibe of the original record and kind of pay homage to it, but at the same time, like give it some life that we think it really needs and ultimately, we felt like it deserved.
I feel like it modernizes it too.
Yeah.
Like it brings it to now.
Yeah.
So
I when you were saying like you like those certain records, like you mentioned Opposite and Deadguy and stuff like that, and though at the time they did sound so good, but like now when I go back and listen to like Opposite, I'm like, oh my god, this does not sound that great. But at the time, for the time being, it was awesome and it was so good. And like, I don't even think songs were 320 kps or whatever when you were like ripping them and downloading them off the internet. I think it was like 128 was like you got a good quality MP3 there. But I talk about sound quality a lot with certain bands because depending on the genre that you're a part of, like you said, thrash, and certain metal bands like that more more high pitched sounding, a lot of contrast in there. It's like, it's not really a lot of low end, so to speak. And it's very tinny. It sounds like you
REP.
Yeah. Like you recorded it in like a metal trash can or something like that. But
the metal's metal.
A lot of bands are reverting back to that sound too, especially like hardcore and whatnot. You're seeing a lot of bands like really go for that sound. And I just don't know if I don't like hate it, but I think I enjoy something that's really, taken in full effect. Like people care enough about it to make it really sound great. But again, part of the genre, I guess, is sometimes not sounding great on CD and sounding better in person, And I'm guilty of like not really listening to certain bands on CD because I don't like the way the audio sounds. But if I see them live, I'm like, holy shit, I get blown away,
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think that back then, especially the ability to get a good recording was, I mean, for the bands that did, it was somewhat rare. And then there was a ton of bands that were just, you just got crappy recordings. And now to me, everything's so much more accessible. And, I mean, you could get a great recording in a basement. And so, the fact that maybe there are bands out there that are aiming for a specific sound, so be it. But like at the end of the day, like, I think we, for the most part, I think a lot of bands know what they want, going in. And if that's what they're going for, so be it.
How'd you guys link up with Will? Was that something that you sought him out, or did he kind of catch wind of you guys doing stuff? And since you guys were not too far away from him, he's in New Jersey. He's very fond of, I'm sure, like your band and are familiar with it. So how did you guys link up together?
Filled out his web form.
Nice.
I reached out to him over his contact us form on his website and was like, hey, I don't know if you know who we are or if you're in like our bands, but I think I reached out to him originally to do the remix before we ended up deciding that we were going to do the re-recording. And then I believe Cameron ended up connecting with him through Rob from Incendiary, if I'm not mistaken, because they had recorded their record with him.
Yep.
And they were like, you should have him master it. So ultimately, we ended up linking back with him to do the mastering. And he had written me back and was like, yeah, I'm into the band and I'd love to be a part of it. He had done a bunch of the other some of the other reissues that Ferret Good Fight had done, right, for like Martyr and a couple of the other bands, so Disembodied, etc. So we were happy to have him on board as well.
That's very cool. I remember the question I was going to ask you about the touring situation, so I will ask that and then tie it in with some new information that came out this week that we can talk about. At what point and why did you decide to go full-time and tour full-time? And, as a young person, maybe I don't know exactly what your ages were when you decided, but like probably when you got out, when everyone was out of high school and you had more ample time, what made you decide to just go full-time? Because at the time, late 90s, not a lot, and currently there's not a lot of money being thrown around really, but there was definitely not a lot of money, and exposure online was not at its peak. I'm sure some internet stuff was going on when you were touring and whatnot, but it was nothing like mid 2000s MySpace. People were connecting over the early days of social media. So what made you guys want to and decide to do that?
I think for us, it was once we had connected with Ferret, we had kind of told and we had talked to him, like what our plans were, what do we want to do, that type of thing. We had pretty much committed at that point in our lives. Like many of us had nothing else going on, right? Like I worked for my parents. My parents owned, a business. John's dad owned a business. Cameron worked for my parents. Our bass player at the time wasn't really working. Our drummer didn't work. So ideally, we didn't have anything else going on. So it was like, the way we looked at it was, if we had that ability to just be on the road and support ourselves enough to just, keep going and pay the bills, we had nothing really at home for us at the time. So we just decided that we would just go all in and see kind of what happened. I think probably about halfway after we were like through that tour cycle, we saw a lot of the bands that we were going out with, bands like Thursday, bands like Unearth, bands like, Poison The Well is another example, Hopesfall, etc. A lot of those bands started to kind of, take it to the next level. And at the time, I think there was a lot more being, like Hot Topic and other, started to pay attention to a lot of the bands of our genre or style, right? Like, and those labels like Trustkill, like Ferret, like Victory, etc. So it just kind of propelled us, I think, a little bit toward the end to just keep the ball rolling until we realized, like, we couldn't keep it going any longer.
Yeah.
But
and you guys quit, or not quit, but you guys, took a break for a little while. But you took a break at a time, like I was just saying, where like MySpace and like those early days of like social media were just catching on. Do you ever think, and looking back now, obviously it's 2020 hindsight, but like where you're sitting at now, do you ever think like, man, if we could have just held out for 6 more months, maybe would have had like not a second wave, but like the first wave would have continued going for a little bit longer?
I don't think so. Like, I feel as though like we had kind of run our course, and at the same time, like we hadn't put out another record. I mean, we had only done, 1021, and I think it was released early 2001. Now we're talking 2003. It was the time for us to like put out another record. We were starting to look for another label at the time. We were in talks with a couple of labels, but at the same time, like it's sort of, I've always described it as kind of like, it started to feel like a job. It started to feel like where we were getting to the point, and this is especially true, where we put out those last 2 songs. I don't know if you ever heard them before, but we put out these last 2 songs.
Is that the Skycamefalling EP?
Yes.
Okay.
And they were intended to be a demo. They were intended to shop to labels. And most of that was done because we had people in our ears, so to speak, you know, saying like, hey, you guys should be more melodic. You guys should sing more. You guys should do this. You guys should do that. And when you're out on the road, you know, 10 months out of the year, getting $5 a day, and people are saying like, hey, you should sing more, or you should be more melodic, or you should do this, or you should do that. You start to think like, is that the magic bullet? Is that the key to unlock that we can maybe gain some fan base or maybe take it to the next level? And that's what those demos actually were to me, right? It felt a little bit forced at times, and I don't really think it was something that we were intending to release. But at the same time, it's like, if we had done a whole record like that, I don't really think that would have done anything for us. So to me, I feel like we ended at the right time. I think we had kind of gotten to the end of where the life of the band was, and where, you know, being in a van for 10 months out of the year for 3 or 4 years with the same guys, like we were done, like we were tired,
tapped out. Yeah, I do remember, and again, because I got into like all this kind of stuff in my last couple of years of high school, coming over from the nu metal world. I remember, you know, getting a hold of like Victory Records, Trustkill Records, and Ferret Records, and I just remember you guys being like always on like the comps, or always, you know, touring with those bands. But you guys ended so abruptly, like even before I was in a band. I never really got to see you guys, and it was just cool because, like, again, you know, you did the Poison The Well show, and that came full circle and whatnot. How did that even come about for you guys? I mean, granted, you come from the same almost era as Poison The Well and whatnot, but, you know, they're from South Florida, you guys are from Long Island. How did they decide to go with you guys for the New York shows, and how did that come about?
Yeah, I don't know how it all came together, like, meaning, like, you know, as far as like what prompted who to ask us to play. What I do know is, you know, I knew Poison The Well from when they were an Acre Lost. Like, I don't know if maybe you're too young to remember it, but Victory Records used to have a chat room.
Oh, no, I remember chat rooms.
So yeah, it was called Vic Chat, and I met their singer, their first singer, on Vic Chat. And we became friends, and we traded tapes, because that's what I was doing at the time. Like, we had our demo, and I would meet these other bands, and I'd be like, "Oh, I'll send you my demo. Send me your demo." And so I'd had them come up and play a couple of shows, like in basements here on Long Island, before Opposite, you know, had come out, and even, you know, before they had signed to Trustkill. And I was talking with their manager at this last show, and I guess there was some kind of discussion over, you know, who would be a good band to support Poison The Well at these shows that is local, and our name was thrown out there, and ultimately we got asked to play. It just felt like the timing, given what we had going on with the vinyl, like, you know, and that was we had intended for that record to be released on 10/21 of last year. Was our goal, but it didn't really, the cycles really didn't come together. So what we decided was, you know what, like, that's the right time for us to make that announcement. But at the same time, it felt like, you know, things were kind of converging, so that, you know, we got asked to play the show, and we had this other thing coming out. So it just felt like the right time with those two things kind of coming together.
Interesting.
Yeah, and also Cam was like he was living in Mexico and also in California, so he wasn't around for a long time play shows, and he had just moved back to Long Island, so we had like everyone here now.
Cool.
So it made it a little bit easier to play this show, minus Matt's in North Carolina.
Yeah,
the lineups were really interesting for each, you know, city that they played in. The New York one was more, I want to say legacy band oriented, but I don't necessarily, the opener for the show, I don't think I don't know too much about those guys, but it seemed, it seemed like, you know, Indecision and you guys were coming from way back in the day, which I thought was cool, because the other, like, and it was cool that in the California shows they had some newer bands open up, like Skycamefalling, See You Space Cowboy, but you know, that was pretty neat. Speaking of like coming back and having things going on in your timeline now, you guys just also announced this week that you guys are playing Furnace Fest, and they have the ability to kind of get these old bands back together, reunion style. Not saying that you guys weren't doing stuff for the last couple of years, but I don't think you were doing anything at this frequency. It seemed like, so I could be completely wrong about that, and you can correct me. But how did the Furnace Fest thing come about, and how do you guys feel about playing that kind of festival at this particular time?
Yeah, so they had actually reached out to us, I think, for the first one. They had reached out and sent an email.
The first of the newer ones.
The first of the newer ones.
Yeah, 21.
They had reached out to us. Yeah,
2020 or 21. I know one was canceled and pushed
it was 2000. Yeah, I think it was 2001. And at the time, it just wasn't the right time for us. Like I had a medically complex son who was like, COVID was a very real thing for our family, and I told him like, hey, there's just no way that we could do this. Like, we can't make this work. Like, my family was still quarantined at that time. So a couple of years later, we had reached out to them and said, hey, if you guys do need us, we had some momentum going with, the things we were doing behind the scenes. That didn't come together. And then this time around, it just, once we had played the Poison The Well shows, like shortly thereafter, they had reached out to us, and it just all kind of came together. So,
is that like a recent thing? Like that whole thing happening literally was in a handful of weeks?
Yeah, that came together within a couple of weeks right after the Poison Well show. I mean, it was probably about 5 or 10 days later, I think.
After playing, wait, hold on. After announcing the shows or after playing the shows?
Playing the shows.
Oh, wow. So that like just happened this past week or something like that. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like right after we played the shows, we got the offer, and then we accepted, and then they announced it. We thought maybe they were going to wait, and they had sent us a message saying, hey, we're going to announce, this Thursday. And we were like, all right, let's go. Let's do it. So yeah, I'm excited. I mean, it's, I haven't been to any of them since the one that we had played, which I looked up. I think it was 2002 was when we played. So I'm psyched to be back down there. I'm psyched to see the bands that are playing. I see all the photos of everyone.
Heads up. It's a way bigger than back in those days.
Honestly, I don't, toward the end of the band, because that was right around when we were ending, the only vivid memory I have of that was and I am convinced, you talked about long drives and dumb things we did. I'm convinced that because I can't find any remnant of a flyer or anything. I'm convinced we were driving from New York down to Birmingham.
That sounds about right.
And we broke down in Tennessee somewhere, and we actually needed our engine rebuilt.
Wow.
So we had blown the head gasket. So we rented a yellow Xterra, I remember this specifically, and
classic car.
And a U-Haul, like a rider, like a box truck.
Yeah. We
put all our equipment in the box truck. John and our merch guy, Race, drove to Alabama. We drove in the Xterra, the four of us, to go play down there. And we drove all the way back home after that show. And then we paid the guy who rebuilt the engine to drive our van all the way back up for us. And I remember because his name was Country, was what his name was.
As it should be from Tennessee.
Exactly, which was, and I recall this memory pretty vividly, was that our guitar player, John's dad, paid him. And when he called the shop to find out if he had left, the guy was like, why did you give that guy money? Like, he's an alcoholic, and he's probably not going to bring your van back. And believe it or not, he did. But it's just one of those stories that is pretty wild. But like I said, I'm fairly certain we drove from New York to Birmingham.
Yeah, and I'm fairly certain you probably were in the red after that whole insane trip because
probably.
Yeah.
It's probably another reason as to why we broke up. I mean, I remember when the Under Oath tour was cut short abruptly because all of us were broke. Like, Under Oath was broke, and so were we.
Yeah.
And no one was coming to the shows.
I'm looking at that article right now on Lambgoat
Yeah.
from
Well,
2002, August 23rd, 2002. Skycamefalling Under Oath tour canceled. It doesn't say because you were broke, but now we got a little backstory on it.
That's why. Yeah. I mean, we were in Kansas City, Missouri, and playing in front of like 15 or 20 people, and it just wasn't sustainable. Like we were just, no one was making any money, and for whatever reason, that tour just never got off the ground. And Under Oath was like, "Hey, we're done," and we were like, "We're going home too," and we all just ended there, and that was it. That was pretty much the end of the band right there.
Yeah, you're blowing people's mind. They're thinking Under Oath, you know, canceling a tour is unheard of, but this is also like more death metal-y Under Oath, not the whole
Well, this is
chasing
of
safety.
time,
Yeah,
Under Oath.
it's not chasing safety and after. This is prior to all that. Yeah, Dallas is still singing.
Post death metal, right in that, like, I actually just listened to the record the other day for the first time and since then.
Oh wow.
And remembered, I love that record. I thought it was great. And but it was such a transitional point for them on that Changing of Times record. And yeah, it just, I don't know what it was. It just was just a tour where either both of us had toured continually maybe for a long period of time and people were just sick of seeing us, or just for whatever reason, it just never for I think 5 or 6 shows we made, I think none of us made money.
Yeah. That would happen back in the day. You're lucky to get any kind of thing or sleep on a fucking floor of someone's house, let alone a hotel. But so I want to talk like possible future stuff. Clearly, you're going to be playing in October in Birmingham. Is there going to be more? And again, you don't have to say anything, but this comes out next week. So if you have stuff planned that's not going to be public knowledge before next week, then just kind of don't make me have to edit this thing. You know what I'm saying? So don't say anything you don't want to say. But will you have more shows leading to and from that the festival? And also, you know, with all the hoopla of the 1021 coming out and all this and the shows that you've played, are you thinking about new songs, EP, album, or anything like that in the near future?
I'll say, as far as playing a record release when the vinyl is in hand, yeah, we most likely will coordinate something like that, local to the New York area. For Birmingham, I don't think we're gonna do anything. Like, we'll probably fly down there and, you know, look at it, you know, as a kind of like a one-off show.
Okay.
If other opportunities come up, you know, I think we'd assess them and look to see if it makes sense for us. You know, I'd love to do something on the West Coast. I think that would be, you know, to get back out there would be great. But I don't see us like getting in a van and, you know, doing any type of touring or anything like that. The other thing, as far as like new music, I'm sort of, we've got a couple of leftover tracks from 1021 that were recorded musically where there's no vocals. You know, we've talked about, and we actually, that was one of the ideas we originally had when we started to do 1021. We were like, maybe we'll do those songs and add them as bonus and keep it, you know, as the record that it is. But we ended up where, you know, we did the remix remaster. So we still have those 2 songs that were left over. You know, we've kicked around, you know, that idea. Years ago, we kicked around the idea of doing something new. I'm kind of on the fence about it. You know, I've seen bands kind of come back. Some of them do it really well. Others, you know, you kind of wish they
hurt
never
the legacy a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So like, granted, you know, we're not a big band. You know, I don't necessarily feel like, you know, we've got much of a legacy to undo, but at the same time, like, I don't really want to put something that I don't think sounds like us, because I mean, at the end of the day, like, this band was very much like a place and time, you know, like it's sort of a moment, and especially around these 2 records, as far as, you know, the internally how we look at it. So, you know, if we do anything, I'd want to make sure that it's, you know, the right thing, the right sound. I don't really feel like as a band, like I want to, you know, push boundaries. Like I want to keep it to what it is.
Yeah. And I have to agree with you. It definitely is like a timepiece of that era. You know, I'm walking around Target today listening to it, and I'm like, dude, this is like very indicative of like all the early 2000s. Like, there's so much, whether you influenced a band or you pulled influences from bands around that same time too. like, you know, they're just like things you could hear in other songs and other bands from that era. And it's kind of wild how that all kind of transpired between areas of the country, because there's not like, you know, there wasn't MySpace at that point. There wasn't like well, I guess maybe Napster was around, but I don't know how much hardcore and metalcore and metal were being, you know, transferred on Napster. But it's crazy how those influences spread around the country, you know?
Yeah, no, I mean, we were a lot of the bands that we were into around that time, we were seeing at, you know, Hellfest,
Yeah.
the early Hellfest, you know, like Morning Again, Culture, like that was our first exposure to bands like that. You know, so we were hearing those bands in that genre. And that was kind of like what we were into, you know, like I was super into bands like, you know, Day of Suffering. And, you know, it was kind of funny because as we started to do more touring and we got down into like the North Carolina, you know, like the Carolinas actually, like we started to play with bands like Hope's Fall. And we're like, it's kind of ironic that, you know, to some degree, we all sounded similar. We were drawing from the same influences, kind of all the way down the East Coast, you know, all the way to South Florida. So it's just funny the way that kind of all worked out.
Yeah. So I have to ask, what's the goal then for Skycamefalling? If not to, you know, I don't want to say change the sound, but put out another record that's not, you know, representative of the band. You know, what's the idea for coming back and playing the shows and playing Furnace Fest? Is it just kind of like a cool hobby side thing, which again, a lot of us at this particular age don't have the ability to, like you said, pound the pavement in the van for months on end. And, you know, they do weekenders or like, you know, one-off shows every now and then. What's the overall goal for Skycamefalling at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, for us, it's, you know, I'll be honest when I say I think that, you know, when we were around, we had some great shows, you know, like, but things weren't like they are today, right? Mm-hmm. And we got a lot of kids, you know, or a lot of people writing to us, a lot of people, you know, hey, you guys should play the show. I can't, you know, I'd love to see you guys. You know, some of it really is just, you know, the nostalgia aspect of it, like revisiting something where, you know, we never got to, I wouldn't say, you know, we didn't get our due, because that's not really the way that I feel, but it's more like, you know, if we could play to a new group of people that had never seen us before and are interested and want to see us play. And then, yeah, like that's kind of like what we're looking to do. You know, we want to take control of the music we had, you know what I mean? Like we finally were able to get to 1021 to where, you know, we're happy with it and be able to release that on our own and have the means to do that. You know, we own the EP. We've owned it for years. So ideally we want to do something with that. I don't necessarily know to the same level that we did with 1021, but I'd like to see that get a re-release at some point. And then, you know, for the most part, just like I said, if the show seems right, you know, we'll play. I'd love to, you know, get out there to I mean, listen, I've never been to Japan. I'd love to go to Japan.
All you had to do was wait. All you had to do was throw that, you know, album out in the water, wait 20 something years, and then maybe you can catch some bigger fish around the world, you know?
Roll it up in a bottle.
Yeah.
Right? But yeah, I mean, I'd love to do something like that. You know, we went to Europe once, you know, so there's a couple of places that I'd love to go see if the right opportunity happened. I think we'd all be, you know, into it. But yeah, I don't really put any kind of guardrails on it right now. Like if the right thing comes along in the right place and it's the right time for us, we'll do it.
How active were you guys? How active have you been the last couple of years? Has it just been like one show every couple of years, or because it's? Yeah. I went through like the database, right, for Lambgoat, because we do have all your early posts and stuff, which I thought was really cool because we have stuff.
Lambgoat was an early supporter.
Oh, I know.
It was actually really nice. There was always like news and like tidbits or something like that. Yeah.
And I think that's and again, like I'm not the original owner. I took over for Alex, you know, a couple of years ago, but I think that one of the things I hold very dear is that we are one of those websites that was online at that particular time. So like, you know, what's the earliest Skycamefalling post we have? November 9th, 2000. That's the earliest Skycamefalling, you know, post on Lambgoat. So it's really cool that, you know, you can go back through time technically and get all the nostalgia dopamine rush if you wanted to. But, you to piggyback off of like what I think maybe the goal situation might be, and you wanted to play all this other stuff, it would be great, I think, if you were able to not write a full length, but maybe just a couple songs or whatnot that were very similar to the time that you guys were around, like the earlier stuff. I know it'd probably be a little difficult because there's no way that the last 20 something years hasn't influenced you in some way in your brain. But, like I said, I was listening to 1021 again, walking through Target, and I was like, God damn, it does take you back to like when I was a kid going to shows for the first couple of years. You know what I mean? And I think it'd be really cool if you were able to work it out to where you could make something similar sounding like that nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, we do have those 2 songs that we like uncovered, like that were supposed to be in.
Oh no.
Do something like that, and if we did, I think it would be a short release. I don't think we would do like anything.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about those 2 songs possibly in like maybe a new instrumental, something along those lines, cool. Which I think would be cool. Those songs are a little bit different to a degree, but obviously they fit in with the material that we were writing and recording at that time. But yeah, I mean, years ago we tried to write some new stuff, and
yeah, that was like
it kind of all
2018, right?
Yeah, it was like it kind of all came out like, I hate to say like too good. Like Cameron's a great guitar player and he's really progressed as a musician.
Yeah.
But it didn't sound like us. Like it was very, so different from what I remember. Part of what I've said to the guys is that like the reason that the songs were the way they were was because we were young. Like we didn't know what we were doing. So like, maybe you're combining 2 parts that shouldn't be there. That shouldn't be together. Or maybe you're going to stop after every single part you wrote and transition into the next part.
Yeah.
Like those were things that you did because you were like, well, we don't know, how to write a bridge. So like, we'll just stop and then, we'll start the next part. And, then the drums come in. So, when everything was kind of flowing and it was this like one, couple of songs that we had musically, it just didn't really feel like us, and we kind of scrapped all those sessions that we had.
I feel that. And I do feel the whole like writing process, like you were just mentioning, with everyone being younger, just not knowing anything about songwriting or whatnot. And you can definitely tell, like, especially when shortly after you guys kind of, went on hiatus or whatever, MTV started catching wind of all this kind of music, and then you'd have like bands entering bigger studios and working with bigger producers, and then all of a sudden songwriting became better, and it did push the genres a little bit, but then you lose a little something. I don't know if it's like the youth of the whole thing, but you lose something to where it's like you said, some stuff is too good.
Right, exactly. And I mean, so many of those times I remember just, Cameron would come up with a part, and then, Matt would have another part, and we'd just be like, well, how do we make these 2 parts, kind of meet? And you didn't really have you just shove them together. You didn't have a proper transition. That's the way it went. So, I listen back to the demo sometimes, and I'm just like, it's amazing to me that, those songs, but it was just, again, it was, we were young, naive, we didn't know what we were doing. We just kind of had ideas and came together and just wanted to sound like other bands.
I get you. Andrew, I definitely want to bring up the sleeping, since we've talked up for like 50 plus minutes about Skycamefalling.
Posters behind us.
Yeah. And I have to say, I don't know if you're technically a part of questions and answers, but questions and answers. I think you came in a little.
So like literally, my brother just called me up. They were doing a tour with Sunny Day, and they were like, "Hey, we just need someone to do some keyboard parts for you for this tour." And I was like, "Sunny Day, yes, like I'll do that tour." So my brother has a keyboard, and we just kind of worked on a few parts on that, and they're already in the songs. Like I didn't write those or anything. So yeah, I just went on the road with them for, I think it was like 5 dates with Sunny Day. So, and I'm not like in the band. It's just kind of like, I just tour with them every once in a while to, help them out.
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
That's cool.
But actually, one thing I'll say is like when my brother recorded a new record with The Sleeping, it actually that's kind of the reason why the guitars in the Skycamefalling actually got recorded up in Applehead, because he on the side was like, "Hey, I have this Skycamefalling record. I need like some help with it," and kind of brought in the Applehead guys
Interesting.
to then mix and record stuff like that. Kind of all like the timing of it all like synced up, and that's how that happened.
We've kind of rode some of they've sort of forged some of the path that we've been able to utilize. Like they self-released their own album
You're talking
recently.
about the Sleeping?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
Sleeping.
They did a Kickstarter. A lot of those ideas were ideas that Andrew and I, when we were getting this whole thing together, were kicking around. Should we do a Kickstarter? Should we do this? Should we do that? How should we go about doing this? The Sleeping kind of getting ahead of us and doing those things in front of us allowed us to realize, utilize some of them, correct some of the mistakes that they had made when they had realized like, oh, you know what, like maybe that wasn't the wisest idea to do this. We've been able to kind of utilize that to, basically make our whole thing.
Yeah, like steer our ship.
Yeah. So it's worked out well for us
in
that respect.
I had Doug on the podcast a while ago, probably like during COVID or right after COVID times, but it was interesting to see how close he was with you guys in the beginning. I think I'm correct in thinking he was like the young kid hanging out at your space a lot back in the day.
Yeah, so the way that it kind of worked was when Skycamefalling broke up, the idea was originally to have, so the last lineup of Skycamefalling was myself, John on guitar, Cameron on guitar, Sal on bass, and Joe on drums. Joe, Sal, and Cameron formed the Sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
I was originally intending to be the vocalist of that band, but backed out. I was like, I'm not really a singer. And I knew what they needed.
Yeah.
And they got Doug. And so at that time, Doug, I think, was living in the studio.
That's what he said, yeah.
Yeah, there's a great story about him. There was a payphone. I don't know if he told that story on the podcast.
I'm trying to, if you start telling me, it'll come back. But he definitely told some stories. But yeah, go ahead.
There was a payphone in the studio that had nobody knew the number to it. So like Doug, when he was staying at the studio, you couldn't get a hold of him. But the phone rang one day and he ran over to it and picked it up, and they were obviously had the wrong number, but he was like, what number did you dial? So he wrote down the number so that now we had you wanted to reach Doug, you called the studio and he would pick up the payphone that was inside the studio. So that's how we would all get in touch with Doug. But yeah, he was living in the studio at that time. And those guys were like, they were workhorses. Like they practiced day and night. And then I ultimately ended up releasing their first album.
Is that questions and answers or no?
No, it was Believe What We Tell You.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, okay.
The first one, yeah.
Yeah. Now did that? I don't necessarily know. I mean, you were a part of the original talks for the band, so I feel comfortable asking. But the idea for that project, did that come out of the idea, or did that come from the band Skycamefalling disbanding, but also like all those people in your ear about like you should sing more, you should do this is like more profitable, that yada yada? Because there's a drastic difference between the Sleeping and Skycamefalling. So
yeah, I think we were all listening to lighter music at the time. Like one of our favorite records, I remember this, was we were all really into the Code 7 record was The Rescue.
Mm-hmm.
That Red record, like we were super into that record. So we were starting to get into like much more melodic stuff.
Okay.
Like we were starting to listen to a lot of bands in those genres. Like I think one of the bands that we were all really into, and I don't know if you were into music by then, but like when The Used first broke, like that first record was fantastic when we were young. Like we were on, like we actually saw that band on Warped Tour because we were somehow it landed on a few Warped Tour dates at the time. And we actually watched The Used go from like a side stage band to have to move up to an actual, one of the bigger stages because their crowds were so big.
Yeah.
And So we were getting really into music like that. And I think that toward the end of the band, it was sort of a natural progression for them to start playing a genre that was more melodic. And I think Skycamefalling intended to try to capture some of that. We just, vocally, I didn't know how. But in the same sense, like I think we were starting to head in that direction. There was some aspect of that being a natural progression, and some aspects of that being like hey, why don't we give this a shot? Because I could have screamed over that whole record, on the last EP, but I was trying something. I was like, hey, maybe we'll do this. This is what the bands that I like are doing. Maybe I could try that. But for the Sleeping, I think it was a little bit more of a natural progression for them to kind of see that. And Sal was always into very melodic music as well. So the other thing that's also kind of that I failed to mention is the fact that like the Skycamefalling that wrote that EP and the Skycamefalling that wrote the full length are completely different bands.
Yeah.
So
lineup wise.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, hour goes by quick, does it not?
It does.
It does. Well, let's wrap it up with this. Is there anything else that you guys want to kind of like give a dish out or say before we kind of, depart this evening?
You got anything? I'm good.
No, I mean, thank you for doing this. This was great. I appreciate you reaching out. Other than that, yeah, I think we're right now just we'll be dropping some new tracks, not new tracks, but new old tracks.
New to us.
Yeah, new to everyone else. We'll be kind of doing that.
Oh yeah, we did. We should mention that we released Laura Palmer as a single.
Yes, yeah. I did see that. I did see that today.
Yeah.
I have to make a post about that.
The newest. That's the new version of the Skycamefalling version.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to seeing you for a third time this year, come October. I literally said that the other day. I was like, go figure. I never saw that band ever in my 40 years of life, and now in one 6-month period, I'm going to see them 3 times.
Well, funny, we were just about to announce a Jacksonville show, so
funny
enough.
Are you really?
No, I'm just
okay. I was like, what? That's a whole fucking tour now. No, I'll see you guys in Birmingham though, nonetheless, and it'll be a great time. I don't know how long you're staying, but if you're staying for more than the weekend, or if you're staying for the weekend, we on our first night there, I think Thursday night or whatever, I usually try to get a little get together with some bands after the pre-show. So if you're there for the pre-show on the Thursday, or I don't know what the schedule is like now, but usually the day before the festival, I kind of try to arrange a little hangout for bands at this little Marty's PM. You're more than welcome to, join us. I'll remind you via email if you're able to make it or not. But if not, no hard feelings. We'll just get you a round or two. You know what I mean?
Yeah, all good. No, appreciate it.
All right, guys.
Awesome.
I appreciate your time. I look forward to seeing you, like I said earlier. And thanks for doing this show.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
All right.
Take it easy, y'all.
See you in October.
Yep.